A round of decent tips. Welcome back to another video, guys, and in this video I'll be going through my tips from round 9 and how I went, as well as going through and tipping the rest of the round 10 games, as we now know that I'll be shifting to these videos to Friday to then just help out with the scheduling for you guys as well. And that means that the Thursday night games that occur will be tipped on Twitter, I guess. But anyway, before we jump into this video, remember to like and subscribe, turn the notification bell on so you know when I upload. If you are listening on Spotify, give me a follow and a rating over there, and let's jump into the tips. So 7 of 9. Top 44% for the round, and puts me at a rank of 386, 307, which I think is around about the top 40% or so. So first game of last week, you would have seen I had Collingwood by 15. They won by 14, so a really good tip there, 1 point off. Then the next game, I had Carlton by 11, and they won by 15. So I was 4 points off there. Should have just kept tipping teams by 15. And then the next game of the round, I had Hawthorn by 19 points. They ran away with it a little bit to win by 35. So I was 16 points off there. Still a pretty good tip. And then got this one wrong, the Sydney versus Essendon game. Sydney by 11 points when Essendon won by 8. So I was 19 points off there. Not the worst tip there. And then Gold Coast against Western Bulldogs. I had Gold Coast by 15. They ended up winning by 10, so I was 5 points off on that one. So a pretty good tip. Then Adelaide against Port Adelaide. I had Adelaide by 18. They won by 5 in the end, so I was 13 points off there. So a pretty good tip again. And then Richmond against the Eagles. I had Richmond by 13 in the end, so I was 11 points off there. I mean, you're always going to have pretty close games in general. In these, when you tip, like I have, when the whole round is very, very close, and you've tipped within 10 to 20 points to each margin. And then we get to the Geelong versus Giants game, and this was a really bad end to the Sunday, even though they technically count the draw as a correct tip, because I tipped Geelong by 22. And they ended up losing by 4, so I was 26 points off. And then I was still somehow sort of correct on the Brisbane North, because they give the draw tip. But if you were to take it in absolute values, I was not. I was 60 points off as they drew, which was a weird one to sort of see as well between those two teams. You usually see it between teams that are a lot closer on the ladder than first and second last at that point. So now we go to round 10, and this first game of the round, in round 10, I had Gold Coast by 25 points, 25 points, which they ended up winning. They won, but they only won by 8 points, so I was 17 points off there, which isn't the worst to start the round. Top 42% there. Should have gone 10. I had it hovered over 10 or 15 points, but then I decided, I just thought with Hawthorn's outs and stuff like that, that they would lose a little bit more convincingly. And they just kicked so accurately. Hawthorn, 15 goals 6 in the end to 16 goals 8, but they were 12 goals 3 or 13 goals 3 at one point, Hawthorn. So that kind of kept them in the game. Then we've got Sydney against Carlton at the SCG. Both teams effectively playing for their life, I would say. Sydney, it is basically cooked if they don't win this. You can look at the last 10 or so years, I would say 10, 12 years of ladder positions for 8th place sides, and even without accounting for the introduction of the extra game, that would make it harder for teams in the past below 2022. Then you look at the ladder position and you go, most teams need 12 wins anyway. And if you think about it, that extra game's probably going to mean, you would think, about half a win to, if not another full win on top of it. So Sydney would at that point need to go, if they lose tonight, 10-3, and then also put their percentage about 15 points higher, which it starts to get very, very hard to actually do that. So that's why it's basically do or die for them. Carlton, not so much, because they do have, but I'm not sure. I haven't looked in depth with Carlton's fixture, because I've looked in depth with the Sydney fixture. They've still got the Bulldogs, Port Adelaide, who they both go really poor against, even though they shouldn't, even in their good years. They've got Brisbane and Geelong, which pretty much are walk-up losses, I would have a feeling it feels like. And then they've got GWS, Essendon, who else as well? They've got another couple of teams as well that you would say they're going to run it close with, if not lose itself as well. So that's why it's basically do or die for Sydney. I'm still going to tip Sydney in this game. I'm going to tip them by, I think, 13 points. It is supposed to be wet as well, which should negate somewhat to a degree the tools for the likes of Carlton, and Sydney's smalls I think are better. So yeah, I'm going to go Sydney by 13 points there. Then we have Collingwood against Adelaide. Collingwood got some rest into their players, and also they're playing back at the MCG where they won't move for like 3 months. So yeah, I'm going to go Collingwood in this game. I think that they're just a little bit stronger than Adelaide. Collingwood are probably the premiership favourites alongside Brisbane at this point. And you'd almost say Collingwood just because they get to play at the MCG, which it is a massive advantage against interstate sides. So I'm going to go Collingwood at the moment. And I'm going to go Collingwood by, I think, 6. They play really good games, though, these two in the past. If we look at it quickly here, 59 points to 58, 82 to 80, 78 to 74. I'm going to go Collingwood in a very close one by 7 points there. So then we have Port Adelaide versus, not Essendon, Port Adelaide versus Geelong. Slightly different. Port Adelaide look really, really poor at the moment. I know that they just lost slightly to Adelaide, but those showdowns are always extremely close, it feels like. So I'm going to go Geelong in this game. I think Geelong just have a way of winning, as well as they need to find a way to bounce back from, I know that they have a way of winning, that I just said that, but they did lose to GWS, so they need to get back in touch with sort of that top 4, because you don't want to lose ground to it. You don't want to lose 2-3 game slide to it, and they could even lose a 2-game slide to 5th place on top of top 4. I know Hawthorn lost, but there's a very good chance that at the start of this round, top 4 was 1 game. There's a very good chance that even top 5 is 2 games away from them. I know that Adelaide will probably lose and keep it so that the top 4 is only 2 games away. But there's a very, very good chance that that they really do start to lose touch if they don't win this. So I'm going to go Geelong in this game. I think they win pretty convincingly, and I'm going to go Geelong by 17 points. GWS against Freo. You have to go GWS in this fixture. I think Freo just looks so bad. But then again, Freo also have the likes of Luke Jackson in the ruck, which could provide some semblance of help. GWS, I don't think they have anyone out or returning, neither do Freo. So you could see Freo win this one, but I just don't see it. I just see the likes of GWS being able to run over the top here. And that's why I'm going to go GWS by 24 points at home. Then you have Western Bulldogs against Essendon. I just think Western Bulldogs, their midfield is way too strong for the likes of Essendon at the moment. So I think they're going to be able to just win it out of the contest there, because I think that Western Bulldogs have a better top line. If you think Bont versus Merritt, I would take Bont. If you think English versus Goldstein, I'd take English. If you think Ed Richards versus Coolball, I would take Ed Richards. And if you think Tom Liberatore versus Durham, I'm taking Tom Liberatore. So that pretty much means that their first choice midfield is across the line better than the likes of Essendon. So I'm going to take the Western Bulldogs in this one by 19 points. And then you have Richmond versus North Melbourne. I could spend so much time on this one. And someone said this as well, which would be quite funny. There is a legitimate chance, and I know that they'll actually be behind Port Adelaide on percentage, but there's a chance, a slight chance, that if Port Adelaide gets flogged and the bad North Melbourne turn up and Richmond run over the top of them, that Richmond are ahead of St Kilda and Port Adelaide and Sydney, and also Melbourne. Sorry, that Richmond are ahead of Melbourne, Sydney, and Port Adelaide come round's end. That would be crazy. I am going to go with, I think, North Melbourne. I think that they showed a lot in the last game. And so, yeah, I'm going to go North Melbourne in this game by, I think, 4 points. I think it will be tight. I don't think they'll get over the line by much, but I think that they'll be able to. Then we have Brisbane versus the likes of, who is it? Melbourne. Yeah, Brisbane's going to win this one by 22 points. Even if Omac is injured, they'll still win. And then St Kilda will beat the hapless West Coast Eagles, and they'll win by, I think, like 18 points. I don't think it will be a thrilling game, but I think that they'll just find a way, will St Kilda. But anyway, those are the tips for round 10, as well as we went through earlier quickly, the tips for round 9. Put your tips in the comments below, and I'll see you guys back here tomorrow for the review of the Sydney Carlton game in a fantasy and Supercoach alike. So I'll see you guys back here tomorrow for that. Bye, guys.